who's going to stop the Palestinians from using this water? And as the Central Intelligence Agency says, it's Israel's main recharge for water. So if the Palestinians control this ground, they're going to use up all the water. Peacefully. Peacefully. Nicely. No weapons. Where's Israel going to get the water from? There's no answer to that. And in fact, one of my overlays, what I had is a overlay of where all of Israel and the aquifers are for this area. And my source for the, when I go to a congressman, I pop it down. I say, this is the overlay for water resources. But I say, where do I get this from? Because I want people to doubt me. I have a page in my briefing book. I took the map off the State Department map for water resources in Israel. Right off that map. Now, if you take this little front page of this piece, you'll get a clue as to why topography is so important in understanding this concept. If you look at the West Bank, it's really the shape of this plexiglass piece, in that you have the Jordan River here, you have a steep incline to the crest, and then you have a gradual decline to the green line. Now, why is that so important? That's so important because this area is so steep that almost nobody lives there except a bunch of fanatical Jewish settlers, quote unquote. This is much more gradual, and this is where all the Palestinians live, in this area from the crest to the green line. Now, when Rabin, why is that so important? Well, when Rabin was running for election, he drew the distinction between political and population settlements on the one hand, and strategic settlements on the other hand. What was Rabin thinking? Where was he going? Well, if everyone turns to this front page and looks at, it says the Alone Plan. Now, how many people over here have been to Israel? Oh, that's great. How many people here have relatives in Israel? That's also great. I'm doing a little commercial. The commercial is, on the back of this demilitarization risk pamphlet, you will see a highlighted section there. Those are 3 organizations in Israel that are actively using my map. And if you want any relatives of yours in Israel to get a house parlor meeting, all you have to do is have them call these numbers. And people who are volunteering their time will schlep the map to your relative's home and show them essentially what I'm showing you now. But getting back to the topography, why is the absence of Palestinians in this area and the presence of Palestinians in this area so important? Well, whenever you go to Israel, you always hear there was an Israeli general who had a plan that you could give up part of the West Bank. Now, I, as just the normal Joe Schmo American Jew, said, oh, my intuitive notion of that was, okay, we're going to keep the part that's closest, and we're going to give up the part that's furthest away. That was my just general intuitive notion. Turns out that that intuitive notion is exactly contrary to the fact. Because if you look at the Salome plan, and you look at the highlighted section on the bottom, you see areas to be returned to Jordan under the Salome plan. Now, what area is that? That's the area, that's the gradual sloping area where all Palestinians, quote unquote, live, our Palestinians. What is the area to be kept by Israel? It's this little strip over here that is lodged that will be lodged between 2 Palestinian states, meaning Jordan on this hand and Palestine on this hand. Now, this is the Rabin plan, in that when Rabin says strategic settlements, those strategic settlements basically fall in the areas that alone would have quote-unquote kept. His population settlements, on the other hand, are in the areas that the Palestinians have a greater population. Now, why is that so important? Well, if you take the last issue we just described, which is the water issue, and you overlay it with what is being proposed, you have the following question. The very area under the loan plan that is slated to be given up is critical for water. Now, shouldn't you have the water problem solved in some way before you give up the land? Reasonable question. I have shown this to dozens and dozens and dozens. It is impossible physically to keep any control of the water if you give up the land. Now, your friends, your relatives in Israel might find that rather important. Now, the next page, the next page just gives you a basic idea of where all the amounts and volumes of all the water. Now, the first question everybody asks about the water is, what happened before 67? Everything went fine before 67. Not exactly. In fact, before 1967, the Syrians in 1964 tried to divert the headwaters of the Jordan. How did they do it? It's very simple. You peacefully build a dam network right along this area here. What did the Israelis do? Under the leadership of Yitzhak Rabin, who was then General Chief of Staff, they bombed the heck out of the Syrian peaceful builders on the Golan Heights. They stopped. But the point is, that bombing and conflagration over the Golan Heights water was one of the key leading elements to the 1967 war. Meaning, when Hafez al-Assad says he wants every single grain of sand from the Golan Heights, he also means every single ounce of water, and proper water. Now, when you hear the Israelis saying, oh, we can give up part of the Golan Heights, what's going on there? I'm not going to go into the micromanagement details, but the net is that, when you can see it plain as day on the map, there's two parts of the Golan Heights running north and south. There's this mountainous part here, and there's a rather steep cavernous part here. The eastern part is critical for defense. The western part is critical for water. So when they're saying we can give up part of the Golan Heights, they're saying we can give up the military part. It is almost physically impossible that any Israeli government will give up the water part, which is the eastern part. I'm not going to get into the micromanagement details of how they can give up the Golan Heights. If anybody's interested, you can ask questions later. Next. I'm going to talk about one more global issue, and then I'll go to the next speaker. But it's an important issue. Right now, in southern Lebanon, you constantly hear over the radio about the self-declared security zone and Katyusha rockets. What is going on with all of that? Well, if you turn, and now you take the pamphlet, that's a 4-page pamphlet. If you turn to page number 2 of that pamphlet, you will see what the Katyusha rocket looks like. They don't look exactly like this. The Katyusha rocket trucks that are used in South Lebanon, instead of having 40 tubes, have maybe 5 tubes. And sometimes they don't are not even on a truck, they're just mounted in some stones. And what happens is these little rockets are being fired into Israel. Now, how does this all relate to the security zone and various issues? Well, if you look at this little plexiglass piece, this piece represents the range of a Katyusha rocket. In that if you fire from this point, on the scale of a map, you can go roughly 12 miles, which is roughly 20 kilometers. Now, why is the security zone there? Well, if you take this little plexiglass piece, and you start it from Israel's old border, and you push this little piece back